Everybody, welcome to Futures Trading. My name is Mike Fairborn, sitting in for Mr. Ben Watson, who is out on the day. Good to be with you. Plenty to look at. Still some volatility in the markets. Look forward to diving into this with you all. Folks, welcome. I was just catching your names in the chat. Recognize you guys, many of your names. Good to have you on board. I'm joined in the chat by Brett Crowther. You'll see him as BC in the chat, folks. I'll keep an eye on the chat myself the best I can to help answer questions, but that's exactly where you can type in any questions, comments you might have so we can address those for you during our discussion. Plenty to look at, though, today. So let's do this. Let's dive into some disclosures to get the show on the road here. First off, futures and futures options trading does involve substantial risk. It's not suitable for all investors. Some additional points listed, as you can see on this slide, about futures. Obviously, that is our class, so we'll be tapping into those today. Now, let's see, we've got also a quick note that virtual currency derivatives trading involves unique and significant risks. Be mindful of that. As listed here, you should carefully consider whether trading in virtual currency derivatives is appropriate for you in light of your experience, objectives, financial resources, and other relevant circumstances. Now, the information here is for general information purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or personalized investment advice. Paper Money software application is used for educational purposes only. Now, Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research. And finally, a couple of notes here. Investing involves risk, including for some products more than your initial investment. Stop orders are not guaranteed, and execution due to exchange-based rules based on certain conditions at the time of activation. The exchange may reject or substitute an exchange-designated limit order for the originally triggered market order. So with that, let's go ahead and just do a broad overview here. Oh, I was looking at some of the pivot points this morning. We'll dive into those just momentarily. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just go full screen, and we will take a look at just generally where markets are, futures markets. Let's set this up, though, over here on our left-hand side, and starting off with the ES. Now, a couple of quick notes on the ES. It's going to be a bit similar to with the other markets. There's been some correlation as of late in terms of the rally up and the pullback down. If I go ahead and just zoom in on this, let's go to a 6-month chart, kind of highlight where we're at right now. We're actually at a very interesting pivot itself where we could be right now. You'll note, you might have been watching this maybe on the ES, but if I go ahead and set up a couple of simple period moving averages, I had these guys set up, but I just refreshed and lost them. But some of the bigger known moving averages, let's say a 50 moving average has been trailing prices very well on the ES as of late. The 100, there's also the 200. We're not really close to the 200, it's a bit further down. But if I click on this right here, let's go ahead and go into our these moving averages. Take a quick peek at where we're at here. Now we're kind of at this stage, and this will happen in a lot of cases when the markets have been up over extended period of time. You might see correlations to the 50 period moving average. All right, we broke that recently. The corollary to that, when you break it, a lot of times you might find resistance right here. Now that's a big question. Will we see resistance at this level? You can see that we've kind of held below here right at that point. So this blue, this is our 50 period moving average, our kind of cyan, that light blue color right there. Now below that is our 100 period moving average. And what can happen is we actually ended up finding support off of this level. We might be getting a bounce off of this point, running back up to the 50. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen on these longer term type of moves, a bit of pinball action occurring between these two levels. Can happen after a longer term rally, which we did see up here. This is about a 5% pullback. So it seems like a big pullback that we'd had within the markets, but it's really, maybe 5 to 6% pullback. Very, very common after a big rally. And oftentimes what can happen is we might bounce off the 100. Question is what are we going to do now between these 2 points? And so there's our 100. There's our 50. Are we going to kind of, pinball back and forth between the two, support and resistance, or break above and extend higher. Now, this level could be very, very interesting as we zoom in later on and look at the pivot points for the ES, the NQ, the YM, the RTY, the Russell here, okay? So as we look at each of these, it could be interesting because there could be additional signs there that we could begin to bounce up higher or not. And that's kind of going to be an interesting area for us to look at using the daily chart. That longer term time frame is a guide for what we might be seeing on an intraday basis. Will we get a bounce off that, a breakout, or a bounce lower amongst a number of different possibilities? But this is what's common around maybe the 50 after you've broken it. We shall see on that here in just a second. Okay, so in looking at this, let's go ahead and take a look at the other markets, see how they're doing. It's very similar here on the NQ. We did dip down below. We did not, we retraced a little bit lower, but we immediately bounced back off that 100. Quick note on the NQ, we may have also had some longer term support right there, coming in right at on that 24,000 level, actually on the NASDAQ 100 futures here, the E-mini contract. So we're looking at that level. You can also see where we're at right here. You can't really see it. That's the 25. It's kind of hidden by that bubble. But right here, folks, look at this. Right there as well. So a really interesting area that we can use for potential indications, the way that some traders might use the pivot points on this. But quickly, let me just roll through the other key markets before we look at some other commodities here too. YM, literally right at these two levels, 50 day moving average, 100, as well as the RTY is lower. Okay, so the RTY pulled back. A bigger pullback here. Some traders will look at that RTY as a guide for what might happen going forward in the markets. You've got the RTY that can lead the way up or down. A little bit more of a break there, but it was a bigger bounce as well. In fact, the RTY with actually the YM, I guess it's a tight race here, but kind of leading the recovery back today and getting still close back to that 50-period moving average where there could be a resumption of that upward trend. So we'll take a look at that. All right, I want to do this too. As we've narrowed this down, we're going to look at some of these other futures contracts. But before we do so, let's zoom on over and just look at the futures overview first. So I'll go full screen here. Let's see how we're doing today. A lot of times we can get a general sense of what the markets might look like today, just looking at strength and weakness. They're all very similar. I would say this morning, the YM, these are 5-day, 5 minutes, and we're using the pivot point as an example here. That is the kind of the main pivot point line. That you can see right there. We held above it. The YM kind of held right at that level, but we got a really strong bounce off of that point. Okay, so very, very similar. What is fading right now, you can see, is the NQ. Now, a lot of times, as we mentioned in this class, at least when I filled in, the first half hour of the day can be of key interest. We want to see what happens kind of top of the hour. That's when a lot of, we had plenty of economic data that came out today. We'll see how everything settles after that. And then we'll see if we can take out some highs or lows after that first 30-minute time frame. Okay, so we'll give it a 30-minute. I'll just use the ES as an example. 30 minutes, we'll draw a high and a low point, whatever that is, over that time frame from the open. And then we'll also watch for direction there going forward as well. So just to keep an eye on that, we'll do that as well. All right, so a few other points. Let me just jump back here now. We will go back into our other accounts. Oh, one last thing I wanted to highlight here too. On our ES, as we look big picture here, and I'll go to a 6-month chart here. Another thing that's very interesting to look at, another indicator that you all have access to, volume. Just type in volume P, you'll get volume profile right here. Now, there's not really another way to see it if you don't have it. It's going to overlay the volume that you would normally see along the bottom, but it's going to give us a sense of where that is at relative to actual prices over here. You can put them on any of the markets, anything that has volume. You can use them even on equities too. right? Commonly they're used there. But you'll notice where the point of control is coming at. Where is the biggest volume in terms of prices over this time frame? 6 month. The point of control line is right there, that red area. Now I've highlighted the top 10% of volume. You could easily see that the top 20% would also include this range here. But notice that top 10%, where's it at? It's right where we're at right now, which kind of mirrors the top of that 50-day moving average level, very, very close to it. So again, if we can break above here, volume suggests that if we can take that level out, it might just be easier for prices to go higher because there's just less trading activity along that level. I didn't draw that perfectly, folks, but you get the general sense that that 50-day moving average might carry with it some additional significance based upon volume at price at those levels here, right there. Okay. So we're going to want to watch that. Could be a very interesting pivot if we do begin to move from that level. So welcome to all of you just joining us here. Mike Fairborn sitting in for Ben Watson. So just getting started, rolling through some of the key markets. Let's continue. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just take this off for now, although this could be very useful too, looking at other commodities, the volume profile. So keep that in mind. You can check a number of different commodities. Now, what I've listed here are some of the main, I would say, more heavily traded, more recognizable futures contracts. You've got crude. Now, crude, I'm going to shoot back out to a daily chart here. Crude is still dipping. Now, a lot of, I've been reading, just traders, researchers, analysts are anticipating that crude might actually eventually bounce. It hasn't happened yet, and there is, a support level maybe down here around 55. This is good for consumers, not good for those that are long the crude oil contract. But these levels could be interesting. And what I'm going to do right now is utilize a tool that we've got here right on the platform. I'm going to right click and just put an alert in right here, create an alert. And what I'll do with that is, let me try that one more time. Sorry. So I'm going to go down here just to notify me when crude is down in these oils, because there could be a possible bounce that we could see. There is setup. We're going to be at or below this level. And I will just say support so that that can text me or email me or make a sound off the computer when that gets triggered. A quick note on that, you'll notice down here, I've got to notify. You've got to make sure that these are selected, and you got to scroll down to click on this. You can see down here. So notify, and you can see I've got notifications to a mobile device. That has to be selected. Otherwise, you will not get that text message. Click on create, and now I've got it. So I don't have to keep tabs on this every day. I can just kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And I can also put one above here as well. But that was just kind of to illustrate how to put that alert in. Now, up top, upper right-hand corner, folks, to set that alert up, go to Setup, Application Settings. You'll find that right under Notifications. You can put in your email address, your phone number, your mobile phone, for example, to get texted, but you're going to have to do that to set that up within the platform to receive those as well. Okay, moving right along, here's gold. Now, gold did jump up a little bit here, as you can see, and so too did silver, a little bit stronger in terms of a percentage move on silver. So this is going to be interesting for us to watch. Now, you can see that we've actually come down a little bit from that opening, and we were selling off a little bit right at the open. So it will be interesting to see what we get during the day and during our session for sure. Copper was up the biggest this morning. It still is up the most right here. You can see up about a little over 1% right here, but we're getting a little bit of a shooting star on copper. Some of them were liquid grains to look at. Here's wheat. You'll notice that there was a general recovery in wheat off the bottom, and we are now holding that range. So wheat could be of interest. You could see down here as well. Money flow seems to be holding up very, very well with this sideways action in wheat. And what that can tend to suggest is accumulation there too. The point I would draw on wheat, one of the more liquid grains out there, prior highs. We did dip a little bit below, but we're kind of holding right at that level. So higher high, higher low, question mark. You can keep a watch on this. If you do start to recover, like a trend line coming through here, I'm just drawing off the closing prices. Well, we could get started and there could be shorter term trades that we could find within something like a wheat. Now, many of you didn't know this, and I wasn't using it for a long time either, but if you right click here, we can create an alert with the drawing itself. So if we cross above the trend line, in other words, if that trend itself begins to change direction, that might be the earliest indication of it. We could just say something like this, break, question mark, and it will text us that as well if we've got that set up. So that could be a short-term indication that, well, there could be a possibility of a flag pattern potentially developing here. We don't know. But that could be an early indication of that. Okay, so here is corn. Corn as well has been firming up. Prices have. You can see us holding near prior highs. That is, by definition, a higher high and a higher low. But the strongest performer, hands down, has been soybeans. Soybeans, with the administration getting back into gear, having China agree to purchase, I want to say it's 87, I think it's 87 million tons by the end of the year. They've got to ramp that up to hit that number, but don't quote me on those numbers. But it was something, you know, along those lines. It was a bigger renewal of the purchase of soybeans because China had stopped all the way since, you know, this range over here, March or April. And so the beans had been flat, but there's your recovery. A quick note, this could be a longer term move. Perhaps we did break a downward sloping trend line after a lot of a corrective move. This is where we're really showing our strength right here. If I go over here to our Market Watch tab, I've got these contracts lined up, and you can see over a 1 month time frame, the best performer has been soybeans right there. Okay, soybeans, not so much on the last week, but one quick note I'm going to tell you on soy right there, with the soybeans right there. If you look at these numbers and if you get this set up, remember, these can be added in. These are part of the platform. I'll show you where those are at just in a moment. But this has been a 1 week rally, a 1 month. It's been the strongest. And then for a 5-day, what are we getting? That's kind of the visual you're getting right there. The 6 month, it's not loading up, but it had been kind of sideways and ultimately down for a while, right? So it's a very interesting price pattern you're getting on soy. Just to be mindful of that, you'll see that over here, and that is the possible flag right there with the anticipation of further purchases and more demand in that soybean coming up right now. So let's do this. Let's zoom in now into our pivot points and get the show on the road. But I wanted to give a big picture perspective of that. That's the ES right now, short term, looking at our pivots. Now, the pivot points are utilized based on yesterday's data. I did submit the calculations here for you guys. Just for you guys, I sent this tweet out this morning. You can tap into it, but this is just explains how those pivot points are calculated. They do create interesting support and resistance levels on the chart short term that we can tap into after we've already looked at some of the trends. And now we have a general sense of what might be moving. Now we'll tap into this because some traders will use these for potential entries and exits. And I'll show you a methodology there that they'll use today. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and put it in the chat. If you guys do want to reference this, fantastic. By the way, definitely consider giving Brett and I a follow on X. You can follow Brett at Brett Crowther CS. There's mine right there. Just Mike Fairborn CS as well. All right. All right, those are the calculations. And so based upon the high, low, and close divided by 3, that's your main pivot point line. That was the same line we were using to compare strength of those trades, the markets, the indice futures. And you can see that we're getting some weakness here. And it's not too hard to see. Yeah, over here, it's pretty much across the board. In fact, if I click on these, they've all dipped. What did we say about the first half hour of trading? Never seems to fail, especially on a big economic activity day. I mean, this is a big day. We only have 2 days this week for economic activity. I'm just going to scroll down. through some of these other details just to highlight this for you guys. But this, I noted this also on a tweet just 2 days this week, and boy, did they load up Tuesdays. And so with that, Tuesday and where are we here? Okay, the 24th listed. That's interesting. It's a Wednesday. That's funny. So when I copied I got this, took this off of Schwab. It might have been off, but this is going to be Wednesday here. Okay. Okay. But today, that's the one we're looking at right there. As you can see, I'll update this, send out a new one. This is to be Wednesday the 26th right there. Okay. But just so you know, there you have it. Okay, so we had a lot coming out. What did I mention to you guys? That first half hour, what we're going to do, and the RTY is already bouncing back a little bit. It's been so volatile. But what we'll do is we'll take the first half an hour, which we're coming up in about, roughly 9 minutes. Here is our open right there. And what we'll do, I'm just using this as an overlay. First, I want to explain this just to the size of this move. But we take a high and we take the low. I don't know if this will be the low, but whatever that low is. And then whatever direction the market takes in that first half an hour, do we break higher? Do we break lower? That may end up being our trend on the day. That could be our trend on the day. So that's what traders, they might look at. And sometimes, you can get a trend that sorts of kind of builds in after that. But it's really difficult to get through these highs and lows after such a big economic announcement, a big day. And so we'll see. If it does break above, it might trend. So that remains to be seen. Okay, wanted to highlight that because there is a lot going on today, and I want to keep you guys kind of apprised of what you could be looking at going forward. I think many of you are using this already, but just park that in the back of your mind. Where are we after that first half hour? Do we take out the highs or the lows? Okay, now back to pivots. We have some interesting things to look at here on the pivot points. Now, this is the main pivot point. We've got a resistance 1 up top. We've got a resistance 2. And these are really for the bullish trades to the upside. So if we were to get a bounce, you can take a trade actually off the pivot. It's really kind of, this is sort of the tricky area. You can take a trade up. You can take a trade to the downside. Would we want to take a trade up right now? Well, we are technically breaking above that level, but one of the things that a trader could consider in looking at this is we just had a massive move to the downside, a couple of big spikes. And what does that mean for the day? We're not quite past our 30-minute mark, so we still don't know how prices are going to react because we still have some economic data coming out right now. So getting above this level could be of key interest here. Can we get above and can we hold? Because we broke down so sharply initially, and I'm going to really zoom in on this so you can see it. But that big move to the downside, folks, that puts a question mark in there. Will we break back up above? We're already kind of breaking back down again. So a lot of times what traders will do is they'll wait for maybe a couple closes or even a break above and a hold with another bounce if they were to take this trade to the upside. Right now, that's not going to fit with what we do, with what we're talking about, at least today. I mean, this is just a variety of things, but I'm just going to be looking at this today. Can we take out the highs of the first half hour initially? That means that we'd be looking at a potential trade with an R1 break into an R2. Right there. So that is the pivot trade on anything we might be looking at potentially when we're getting the trend in our direction. Okay. We can also get a trend here on the pivots. If we are up here, we could get a trend here, not just the daily chart that could be making higher highs and higher lows, or a flag pattern. It could also be the break over here and the trend up higher as well, right? Because that's what you're getting with an R1, R2. So the trade is a break above the R1. We would buy here, +1. We would sell, for example, right there, -1 contract. All right. Now the same holds true on the bottom. Some traders would do this with the S1 and the S2. We're a little ways away from these today because of that big move down. We do have wider pivots as well, and those wider pivots are oftentimes due to, what was happening the prior day. We did have a volatile move, and so using those calculations I showed you, those are going to create these pivot points over here on the right-hand side, okay? And they can be bigger, but that's what determines this range. Okay, so a lot of things going on here, but let's just show you. So there's your YM. That was the big move on the YM. We broke, shot up, and we broke all the way down. Now that would have been really, really tricky because this was a very, very strong move to the upside here. As you can see, we took out that high and then we took it out. A lot of economic data. You've got to be very, very cautious about that in the morning if it's going to hold or not. And that's what we've got. But we can watch this just to see if we're able to break back up above at the end of or during the day sometime. The RTY actually held up the best. And so we'll be watching this. In fact, what I'm going to do is put an alert right here to alert us, because what we can do is potentially take a trade if we get up there. So I'm going to put it right on that line, create an alert, just to notify me, because I'm looking at a lot of different contracts right now, and we'll just see if we get above there. Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Now, looking at crude, very, very low. Think about this in terms of traders that might be looking for a downside trade. We didn't get quite, we broke, we tested, we didn't quite get to this level, but if you got to that level, that's where they might consider a downward move to the S2. Sorry, the S2 down here from S1. Okay, we didn't quite touch off that, but that's clearly showing weakness. All right, GC holding up. Now, getting into those commodities, these futures contracts and commodities that have been a little bit stronger and to a degree more directional than the ES, the YM over the short term. You can see this strong upward move. And look at this, we're holding right at that R1 level. But when do you decide to make a purchase here on something like this using pivots? Now, I do have within here, that is our VWAP line. This is our volume weighted average price, just basically giving us a reference where average volume is at relative to price, and our price is price above that volume is what traders will look for. That is mirroring this level right here at the R1 point. So here's our deal. If we can get back up above here, but what do you think? Just a break above? Well, we've done a few breaks above. Here's a break, here's a break, 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 break. We've failed every single one of those times. The one thing that we haven't done is broken up and held that level. Okay, so what traders could consider is maybe a breakup, getting above the R1 and the VWAP line, and then also a hold of support before they might consider taking a trade up to the top. +1, -1, just this range. That's just the pivot point trade. Now, some traders might hold an additional, they might buy an additional contract or hold there. Looks like our RTY is breaking out potentially, so let's take a look at it. We got our indication right there, so back at it right there. So you can see the usefulness of those alerts. We're breaking above that level. I want to put a trade on so you guys can see it as an example here on that break. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to pull up RTY here, and I had to switch over here to the paper demo account just to highlight this. But let's go over here and set this up. I'm in the active trader off to the right. Here's the brackets. I'm going to set these up about, just to set them up for now. Here's 10 and 10 for our target and our potential exit, our stop there. I'm going to go ahead and place the trade while we've got it. We just broke above. Okay, and so what we can look at now with this trade in place, and I'll go full screen to see this, to show you this. Initial trade can be, like I mentioned, from R1 to R2, right? Now, if we begin to see price action holding somewhere in the middle ground, and where's that at? 24.50, right there. Some traders will take it off at a 50% level. Now, I've just kind of eyeballed that 50%. point. If you wanted to and get creative, you could actually use over here a Fibonacci level right there and actually drag that fib from the top to the bottom. It's going to give you your 50% number very quickly right there. It's hard to see, but you can see this is it right there. So you could take a look at that level. We came very close to it already. We didn't get much of a move because we bought up a little bit higher. I'm just going to see if we can get a run. We'll see what happens, but some traders will say, you know, if I see a lot of like, you know, we come up and we hit, they might just take the 50% off unless it's like flagging there, and it might send it up a little bit higher. Okay. So that is the RTY. We put that trade on a little bit quick because we had to. You have to be kind of quick. You got to be nimble on these things because they will go very, very fast, right? They can. But that is the trade. Now, talking about the stop, we have to do this kind of quick. What traders will use oftentimes is an ATR, the average true range. And what they'll do oftentimes is a ×2 of the ATR. The ATR is just simply the true range, and they're looking at an average of the range. Now, what's the range of a bar? The range of the bar is the high and the low of any bar. The default is 14, and that's where your average comes in. Your average true range ×2. So the average true range right now, these bar sizes shot up a lot. It is 5. I went ahead and put this in as a 10. I saw this just down below. Just quickly put in a 10 from our entry point. Okay, so from our entry point, I just did basically a multiplied by 2. We got a 10 ATR, and it's all the way down here. Now, some people might say, Mike, that's too high. Some will use a 1.5 ATR. It really just does depend on what we're looking at here and the volatility. Okay, but that is our trade on our RTY. You saw how we could use an alert to assist us in finding that. Right? You got to be quick. You got to know what you're looking for. We'll see what we get on this, but that is how that trade sets up. Now, a quick note on this. Looking at the RTY, and if I just go back to my daily chart, and I'll show you here. RTY. What did the daily look like? That's a 30-minute. Here's your daily chart. We had mentioned that this was maybe a stronger move. It's coming up closer to the 50-period moving average. There might be a little bit left in there to push us up to that level. This was the strongest performer of the group as well. Okay. Now, I wanted to put a trade on. It came very close to our 30-minute time frame. I put it on anyways. I think we're actually trading through that range over the first 30 minutes, but RTY was the strongest, and it got us our entry point. Now, we'll see how it does unfold here. But it's really just kind of that recovery up to the potential 50-period moving average right now, the strongest of each of these. If somebody was to trade it, maybe they're looking for the strongest mover of the group. Here we go. Let's go to a 50, and we'll just refresh that back up on the chart right there. So coming back up to this point, that's where we could find resistance. We'll easily be able to hit a shorter term pivot trade target if we reach that point. Right now, prices, though, are pulling back down. All right. We'll see how that does unfold. Oh, those are all 3. Now, back to our pivot points. Okay. We'd seen some strength. We were looking at, though, for example, gold over here before that trigger went off. By the way, there is your RTY. It did pull back to that level. Is that an exit, by the way? Quick note. Because a lot of things are happening really quick here. We pull back below this point. Does that mean an exit? Not necessarily the way that we're trading it here. We're still going to keep our stop level in place, and we'll see what unfolds there. Gives it a little bit of a range, right? It's 2 times the average range that was trading before, right? The ATR. So it gives it that flexibility to move, but we'll see what does, in fact, unfold here. Well, we got one under our belt. We'll see how that does work out. Back to gold. We can be watching gold as well. I do want to put an alert on gold right here. We can track this. Now, that alert I would have also got on my cell phone or emailed to me, but nothing quicker if you're in front of your computer to get that sound, right? I'll just say R1 over here, question mark. All right. Let's see. You guys following along? A lot going on here. It's very, very active. We've got so much economic data tied into just a couple of days here. So Yeah, that is makes it very fast moving and quick, but we'll keep an eye on it here. I think yes, so the pivots, I'm going to show you that right now. The pivots are a study that are built in. It's not a script, so you can just go right over here, and to add those in, you just want to simply click on the dropper icon. You can see I've got the pivots right there. So that's built into the platform. Everybody, you all have access to that. Pivot points. It's not the person's pivots or the Woody's. It's just simply the pivot points right there. And you can add those in. You can change the colors if you like. I'm going to take this one off. We've already got one added in here right now. All right. Okay. So all I simply did with this is I've got the pivot points saved as a grid. And so when I added the pivot points on, if you want to have it look like this, in fact, I'm happy to share that with you just so you have it. But in fact, I'll do it right now. But it's just a simple grid chart with it. You'll have the ATR on it as well as the volume weighted average price. Okay, so I'll just share this right now. Put this into the chat. It is not a script, but I'll just say scripts, anyhow, scripts are not guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy. Pivot point grid, and you can download this as well. I'll show you how to do that too, but that is the link. And once you get that link, folks, you can copy it, go to setup up top, open shared item, paste it in just like this, hit preview, it'll say pivot points, and you can import, okay? And then from there, you will find it in your charts down below. It'll be one of these grids that you've listed. It's just a quick way to get back and forth between these. All right, so let's see, ES overtook that level. Let's see how we're doing. I don't think we did not get stopped out of our trade. You can see it tested. We're back up above it right here. Just zooming back to the RTY, back to our live trade. Some traders might take it again, a break above the R1 level. Again, watching this closely to see what does happen on this. Let's just see from a futures index overview how these are doing. You can see that we did choose the RTY today to trade, and it shows it, it was the strongest. It didn't actually touch the pivot point. And just making comparisons, it looked to be the strongest here. Still showing some strength, so we'll see how that goes. All right. Now, we've got just a couple more minutes, but let's take a look at what the other ones are doing right now. Here is our gold trade. Okay, so still watching gold. I was going to put an alert on gold. It didn't show up. And not hit enter. Okay. R1. Resistance 1, create. There it is. Okay. So I'll be notified if we break back up above here. Again, folks, sorry, that was a little bit rapid for a little bit here, but I want you to all to remember, we looked initially at the daily charts, right? And we wanted to see what that looked like. Like, for example, on soybeans, there was a little bit of a daily flag pattern too. The pivot points, a lot of traders will say that their expectations could be a lot higher. If we break above a pivot point and there's a daily flag pattern on the chart, right? Because you're getting the daily move that's built into maybe a shorter term, multiple time frame intraday move, you could say, that you're looking at. We saw on gold what that looked like. This is a recap. Here is the gold chart, 30-minute. Here's our daily chart. Long upward trend. Will we begin to make this is a higher low, higher low? Are we on the verge of making a higher high? That's built kind of into our pivot point here is one way a trader could look at this. All right, folks. If you're finding value out of these discussions, folks, definitely give us a like. It lets me know that this session was useful for a useful tool for you guys. You learned something from it. Be sure to subscribe to our channel as well. Before I actually finish up, let's just take a look at a few others. Here is silver, very similar to gold, except we made a new high over here. Gold did not make a new high last couple weeks ago. Silver did. So silver could be in an interesting position. If you come over here and let's look at the pivots, notice we're using daily and then coming back to our other trades as well. This was a trade, oh, there's silver, defaulted. Okay, so there is silver right there, you could see. And we could also be watching this R1 level too. It's a little bit further down, but we'll see what happens for a potential break. So these are just potential, entry points that traders might be looking at. Here we go. So there is copper. Copper has really been actually a fairly strong mover. Looking now, we looked already at crude. There is wheat breaking above the center pivot point and going from there. Final note too on some of these. Remember that you are looking at a very, very short-term time frame. A lot of times I looked at a 30-minute chart just to see what's unfolding here. But folks, what you can see sometimes is a move up here, and it will actually flag right here too. You might see a flag. Don't ignore or forget to see just these lines. Look at the price pattern developing behind the scenes, because you can see an interesting setup. That would be a very kind of fascinating scenario, or you break up higher and you flag right at that level. You might touch it. That could be the entry point for the next move up. These happen regularly throughout the day. Keep a watch on this. Now, flag doesn't always unfold, but we're tying it into a daily chart move. We might see an intraday flag pattern, and these could be potential triggers. So it's not really a complex system if you go through it a lot. I mean, if you just use it a few times, actually, it becomes more familiar to you as well. And this was the kind of the flag on soybeans. So this move right here that you're saying is actually possibly part of a longer term daily flag, okay? And these could be potential entry points on this daily flag that we saw initially. Ways to trade the futures contract, breaking up and down below here, okay? All right, everybody. That is what I had today. That was fast. That went quick. That time flew by. A lot going on, though. Be mindful of it. I'm going to correct this, but also, too, I sent this out earlier. You guys, if you want to take a look at those pivot point calculations, R1, R2, S1, S2, what those are, I just explained these previously, support and resistance, but that's there for you as a reference if you're learning this and want to take a look at it. Again, those pivot points, those are built into the Thinkorswim platform. Showed you how to find those. In addition, consider giving us a follow Trader Talks. Love to have you on board here. I'm just on our playlist, and you're going to see right down here. Where's Ben? Futures is in here, right there. Trading futures. It's one of those. You can do. You can find these just using Control Find or whatever the case might be. But we have these lists in here. Plenty of these to take a look at. Encourage you to subscribe, folks. Again, if you like today's presentation, give us a like. I didn't see a survey out there in the chat, so I think we're all clear there. All right. Well, guys, that was fun. Took a look at quite a bit today. Again, we took a look at bigger picture time frames. We took a look at pivots for potential entries into those time frames. We looked at price patterns as well, how they might fit in. But yeah. All right. Well, on that, it was great being with you all today. Have a fantastic rest of the day. See you next time.